for my 2 cents worth, that would be the thing that I recommend that they do. Instead of sitting there and saying, oh, there's not enough work, I've tried this, I've tried that. Have you tried getting together with your colleagues and then hiring professional help, admitting to the fact that you don't know how to do it yourself, you know how to teach Alexander, and get the professionals to do it? Because whether you like it or not, whether you like what, and as Karen said, I wouldn't have written that advertisement. In fact, I hope no Alexander teachers see those ads. It sounds like I'm selling Alexander technique short. But she said, but I don't know how to get people through the door. These people do. And once they're in the door, whatever methods we've used to get them through the door, then it can be explained to them, this is how it works. And there aren't too many unhappy people that come to do some work with Karen because she's so sure and so good at what she does that, the priority is to focus on what you're good at. Keep doing that, and then outsource in whatever way you can the things you're not good at.
What are the biggest challenges that you commonly face in the introductory lesson that you give through Alexander Technique?
The main thing that in that very short period of time that I find, because they're not coming back for a follow-up next week, is, and I make fun of myself and past people I've worked with the person who's in front of me now, and I demonstrate to them, this is what most people do after their first lesson, and I demonstrate, looking like a very stiff robot standing in and out of a chair properly. And I say to every single person, this is what most people think the Alexander Technique is. It's something like this, and they laugh because I look absolutely idiotic. And I say, if there's one thing out of the information that we've shared today, one thing that you can take away, please take away the idea of not trying to move properly. And they look at me and the eyebrows go up and they go, well, what am I paying you for? And I explain it by saying, you're not learning how to move properly. You're learning about all this stuff that you're already doing, that you don't know you're doing, how to prevent that from happening, and then noticing what happens after that. So if at the very least, every single time you open the door of your refrigerator this week, you stop and you contemplate yourself for 2 seconds before you open that refrigerator, then you are on the path. You're on that yellow brick road of learning about yourself. Now, our method, what I teach, is the Alexander Technique. There's a specific coordination of your head to your neck and your neck to the rest of your body that will facilitate an amazing transformation in your body. But you don't learn that in 5 minutes. You might learn what it's about in 5 minutes, but applying it takes a bit of practice. So at the very least, from today, you start to look at yourself differently after this introductory session and know that it is you that has the control. You have the power. Then I've done my bit. Because I can't really hope to communicate very much more than that in the very first lesson. And at this retreat, this is something else I make fun of, is in this whole wellness industry, in the mind-body wellness world, living in the moment, the power of now, the present moment, all this kind of stuff, all this, I read The Power of Now back in 2004. And loved it. I bought a dozen books and started giving it to my students. Because I thought, this guy is talking about what we're teaching. And The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, that very first book, he didn't tell anybody how to do it. He just talked about it. And I thought, wow, what's missing in this book is an explanation of the Alexander Technique. So I started giving that book to my people, and some brought it back and said, that's great. Some brought it back and said, I don't even know what he's talking about. But at the retreat and in the whole wellness industry, people talk about living in the now. And That's all well and good if you're meditating, or if you're doing yoga, or if you're trying to come to terms with how to do that Pilates movement. That's terrific. But what are you doing the rest of the day? And as far as I'm concerned, it's lip service, talking about living in the now, because nobody knows how to do it, unless you've got a method or a means whereby of observing yourself without judgment and noticing what's going on, which is what the Alexander technique is. Now, I interviewed Roy Palmer, who's an Alexander teacher in England, for the golf article in Direction, and his story is so interesting because he'd been studying karate for 8 years, trying to find, had glimpses of that sensation of being in the moment, of in flow. 8 years of study in an Eastern martial art. He went for his first Alexander lesson because he'd heard it might help him with his back pain, which nothing had solved as well. And in that first lesson, got a sense of what the now was, how he could find the now. Went home, put on the kettle, had a cup of tea, was still in the now, and it completely blew him away. Because here somebody gave him the sense of how to practically live in the now. And to come back to your question, when people have that first lesson with me, I say to them, if you can contemplate yourself as you're opening the fridge or as you're about to turn left in traffic, taking in the world around you but also aware of yourself, then I hope you think of me, or I hope you think of the Alexander technique as being the means that you can achieve that, because that's what we're dealing with. Your body knows how to run itself. The more you get out of the way, the more the right things run themselves. And that is what everyone's talking about living in the now.
What is Direction Journal?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question, Luke. Speaking of which, I have to give you a link through to my website. Direction Journal, the story goes back to my second year when I met Jeremy Chance. He was one of the teachers that came to the training school. And, I might add, blew everybody's mind because he was talking and teaching in a way that none of us had come across before either. That was more the Marge Barstow type of way. And anyhow, met him that first year and really loved his work. It was fascinating. Next year he came back in my third year of training. He said, look, I'm looking for somebody to run Direction. You might be able to do it. And I was pretty taken that he thought that I could do it. And I said, okay, I could give it a shot. What's involved? And I thought he meant he would own it and run it, and I would help him out. And he said, no, I can't do any of it anymore. You'd be taking the lot on. So I took about 7 months of communications back and forth via email between him and his brother Nick in Sydney, understanding the business side of it, understanding the writing and editing side of it, and eventually decided, you know what, this could be the vehicle that I can use to proliferate Alexander technique into the world. It seemed like what had fallen into my lap, a vehicle. So I said, yep, I'll do it. So I took it on, and Direction Journal had been running for about 15 years before it got to me. And Jeremy Chance had been creating these magazine or journals on Alexander technique where he would get people to write, publish all these articles. A lot of them were controversial because it was material that wouldn't be published, or that the societies wouldn't publish this sort of thing because they had to make sure they didn't upset anybody. But Jeremy Chance wasn't too worried about upsetting anybody. He just wanted to make sure that the communication throughout the profession, in a sense, a similar sort of thing to what Michael Frederick did with the congresses, was to get the word out to all the teachers in far-flung places of the world. So